Logan Hayes sat in a classroom in Constant Hall and tried to focus on his exam. It was a Thursday morning. It was just before 10:49. The building around him, ODU's main hub for the College of Business, held 2 full lecture halls and 19 other classrooms, most of them full. Outside on the same campus, students from nearly every Norfolk high school were finishing a college tour. 3 elementary schools sat a few blocks away with kids in class. It was a normal Thursday morning in Norfolk, Virginia, and then the fire alarm went off. Hayes ran out of the building. Once he was outside, he heard it, gunshots and people screaming. By the time police received the first 911 calls at 10:43 a.m., a gunman had already opened fire inside Constant Hall. Officers arrived 4 minutes later. By 10:50, they found the gunman dead inside the building. 1 victim would die. 2 others, both Army ROTC cadets, were rushed to the hospital in critical condition. A 3rd victim got themselves to a hospital in another city entirely, and police didn't even know about them until later. The shooting was over in 7 minutes. The investigation into why it happened was just beginning, and what came out in the hours that followed revealed 10 details that made this story far more disturbing than the headline alone. Detail 1. It happened inside Constant Hall, a building that houses 2 full lecture halls and 19 additional classrooms. Shortly before 10:49 a.m. on Thursday, March 12, 2026, a gunman opened fire inside Constant Hall at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. ODU first reported that 2 people were injured and the gunman was dead. By the afternoon, ODU Police Chief Garrett Shelton confirmed at a press conference that there were 3 victims in total. 1 had died, 2 were in stable condition, and 1 of the injured had taken themselves to a hospital in Virginia Beach. Constant Hall sits on the north end of ODU's main campus, off West 49th Street. It is the central home of ODU's College of Business. According to ODU's own website, the building contains 2 full-sized lecture halls and 19 additional classrooms. It was a Thursday morning. Classes were running, students were inside. The gunman was already dead when officers reached him at 10:50 a.m. Police said the first 911 calls came in at 10:43 a.m, meaning officers arrived 4 minutes after those calls, and by 10:50 a.m. had found the gunman dead inside the building. What nobody in that building knew, as they were sitting at their desks at 10:48 a.m, was what was about to happen. One of the students who found out the hard way was taking a test at the exact moment the shooting started. Detail 2. A sophomore was taking a test when the fire alarm went off. ODU sophomore Logan Hayes was inside Constant Hall taking a test when the situation started. The fire alarm went off and he ran out of the building. Once outside, Hayes told WAVY that he heard a multitude of gunshots go off and people screaming. He said the police response was immediate and that officers made sure students got somewhere safe. Zachary Mulder, another ODU student, had just finished class in Constant Hall and was sitting in a building across the way reading a book when a large group of people ran in. He told CNN affiliate WTKR that they were screaming "shooter" and "gun." Mulder said his heart dropped and that he didn't know what was going on or how close the threat was. He knew he had to leave immediately. These 2 students were in different places when it started, one still inside, one already out, and both ended up running. The fire alarm added another layer of confusion because students evacuating the building were trying to make sense of a threat that was still unfolding. The people running out of Constant Hall were not the only ones on that campus who had to figure out what to do in a matter of seconds. There was an entirely different group of students on ODU's grounds that morning who had no idea they were walking into any of this. Detail 3. High school students on a college tour were locked down on campus. At the time of the shooting, Norfolk Public Schools confirmed in a statement that students from nearly every Norfolk high school were on ODU's campus for a SOAR tour. SOAR is a college orientation visit program, the kind of event where high school students walk a campus, talk to current students, and start to picture what attending a university might look like. Those students were somewhere on ODU's main campus when the emergency unfolded. Norfolk Public Schools said all of them sheltered in place and were accounted for and safe. A spokesperson for the district asked parents to avoid the area due to the increased police presence. The secondary spread went further. Norfolk Public Schools confirmed that 3 nearby elementary schools, Larchmont Elementary, James Monroe Elementary, and W.H. Taylor Elementary, were placed on secure hold while Norfolk Police responded to the situation on campus. Elementary school children with no connection to ODU were locked inside their buildings because of what was happening blocks away at Constant Hall. By the time those school lockdowns went into effect, ODU had already sent its first alert to the campus. What that alert actually said, and the specific language it used, reflects something about how American schools have been forced to prepare for days like this one. Detail 4. The emergency alert told students to run, hide, or fight. At 10:48 a.m, ODU sent an urgent alert to students and faculty. The full text read, "Active threat reported at Constant Hall. Follow run, hide, fight protocols. Emergency personnel responding. Avoid area." At 11:30 a.m, a second alert went out. Due to an active shooter situation in which the shooter has been neutralized, all classes and operations on the main campus are suspended for the remainder of the day. At 12:05 p.m, ODU issued an all clear. The emergency at Constant Hall has ended. There is no longer an active threat to the campus community. Run, hide, fight is the official protocol from the Department of Homeland Security for active shooter situations. Run if there is a safe escape route. Hide if you cannot run. Lock the door. Turn off the lights. Stay silent. Fight only as an absolute last resort. ODU had this language ready to send before any of this happened. The message was pre-written. All someone had to do was push a button. The alerts went out quickly and gave the campus a sequence of instructions as the situation changed. ODU has roughly 24,000 students and around 240 degree programs. Nearly 30% of its student body is military affiliated, in part because the campus is located near Naval Station Norfolk, the largest naval installation in the world. That is a campus with deep roots in military service, and it still needed a run, hide, fight alert on a Thursday morning. While those alerts were being sent and students were moving through the protocols, officers were already inside Constant Hall, dealing with a situation that had reached its most disturbing detail before most people on campus even knew what was happening. Detail 5. The gunman was already dead when officers got there. Police said the first 911 calls came in at 10:43 a.m. Officers arrived 4 minutes later. By 10:50 a.m, they had found the gunman deceased inside Constant Hall. ODU Police Chief Garrett Shelton confirmed this at the afternoon press conference, stating clearly that the assailant was found dead when officers arrived at that point in the building. He did not elaborate on how the gunman died. That last detail, that hours after the shooting, with reporters in front of him, the police chief would not or could not say how the shooter died, is its own piece of the story. Whether the gunman was killed by officers, died by a self-inflicted wound, or something else altogether, was not publicly confirmed by the time of the press conference. The investigation was still too early for that answer, and officials said as much. What is confirmed is the timeline, 7 minutes from the first 911 call to the moment officers determined the threat was over. For the people who were inside Constant Hall during those 7 minutes, that compression does not make what happened feel smaller, it makes it sharper. Those 7 minutes produced 3 victims. One of them ended up getting to a hospital in a way that police did not initially know about. Detail 6. One victim self-transported to a hospital in Virginia Beach. When the initial picture of the shooting emerged, officials said 2 people had been injured and taken to Centara Norfolk General Hospital. Both arrived around 11:15 a.m. in critical condition, according to Centara spokesperson Dale Gording. That was the count as it stood publicly through the first part of the day. Then, at the afternoon press conference, Shelton disclosed that police had since learned a 3rd victim had self-transported to a hospital in Virginia Beach. A Centara official told News 3 that 1 victim had arrived at Centara Independence via a private vehicle and had since been treated and released. Virginia Beach is a separate city that borders Norfolk. Officials later said a 3rd victim had self-transported to that hospital. All 3 victims were affiliated with the university, Shelton confirmed, though no names or ages were released. The fact that a 3rd victim was not immediately part of the official count, that investigators had to piece that together after the fact, tells you something about how fast and chaotic those first minutes were. ODU's campus was flooded with emergency vehicles. Hampton Boulevard was completely shut down at 49th Street. In that scene, one person who had been shot left and drove themselves to another city without being tracked in the initial tally. By the time all 3 victims were accounted for, a key piece of information about 2 of them had been confirmed by people well above the local level. Detail 7. 2 of the 3 victims were ROC cadets, confirmed by the US Army. The US Army Cadet Command released an official statement confirming that 2 members of ODU's ROC program had been shot and taken to a hospital. Lieutenant Colonel Jimmy DeLongchamp, Public Information Officer for the US Army Cadet Command at Fort Knox, Kentucky, confirmed the same to the Associated Press, adding that the command would continue coordinating with the university and law enforcement as the investigation continued. Secretary of the Army Dan Driscoll also confirmed on social media that 2 Army personnel were among the victims, though their identities were not released. The Army confirmed that the 2 injured survivors were members of ODU's ROC program. ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps, is a college-based program that trains students to become commissioned officers in the US military. At ODU, the program exists on a campus where roughly 30% of students are military affiliated, near Naval Station Norfolk, the largest naval installation in the world. Those 2 ROTC cadets were taken to Centara Norfolk General Hospital in critical condition and were described as stable by the afternoon press conference. Their names were not released. The Army said it would continue to work with the university and law enforcement as the investigation moved forward. What the investigation could not yet answer by the time everyone had spoken and the cameras had packed up is the one question that sits underneath all the others. Detail 8. Hours later, investigators still didn't know if it was a targeted attack. At the 2 p.m. press conference, a reporter asked directly whether the shooting was a targeted attack. Shelton said it was not currently known. Hours had passed. 1 person was dead. 2 ROTC cadets had been shot. A 3rd person had self-transported to another hospital. The shooter was dead inside the building. And the most basic question, did the gunman come to Constant Hall to target specific people? Or did he open fire on whoever was there? Had no answer. The gunman's identity was not released. His age was not given. His connection, if any, to ODU was not confirmed. His motive, if investigators had begun to form one, was not shared. Norfolk Police were designated as the lead agency on the investigation. ATF agents were on campus as of 12:15 p.m. and said they would continue supporting the investigation. The FBI was also providing assistance, with Director Kash Patel posting on social media to confirm that federal personnel were working alongside local authorities. Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger said she had spoken directly with university leadership and that state support was being mobilized to assist ODU and Norfolk. Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones said his office was working with investigators. For the students who ran out of that building and for the families waiting on news, the absence of a motive, of any explanation at all, was its own weight to carry. And for the ODU community specifically, it was a weight they had already carried once before. Detail 9. This was ODU's 2nd fatal shooting in just over a year. On February 26, 2025, 2 men were shot in parking lot 3 on West 49th Street, near the Broderick Dining Commons on ODU's campus. The victims were 18-year-old Delanio M. Vick of Norfolk and 20-year-old Timothy G. Williams Jr. of Norfolk. Both were transported to Centara Norfolk General Hospital, where they both died. ODU police said neither was affiliated with the university, and that the preliminary investigation found the shooting occurred between parties unconnected to the school. A suspect, 27-year-old Daquan J. Tyler of Norfolk, was later charged with possession of a firearm by a felon in connection to that incident. That was just over 13 months before the Constant Hall shooting. ODU junior Christian Scruggs told WAVY that he was frustrated the university was facing another deadly shooting. He had been present for both. Scruggs said he hoped ODU would handle this one better, particularly around communication with the families of the injured. This was ODU's 2nd fatal shooting incident in just over a year. Student concerns about campus safety had already been heightened by earlier violent incidents, including an armed robbery at a residence hall in 2024. The person who stood at the press conference that afternoon and said most plainly what all of this means was not a police officer or a university administrator. He was a prosecutor, and he had a personal reason for being there. Detail 10. The top prosecutor in Norfolk went to campus. His wife works there. Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney Ramin Fatehi attended the press conference held after the Constant Hall shooting. As Commonwealth's attorney, he is the elected prosecutor for the city of Norfolk. He said at the press conference that there will be more incidents like this unless lawmakers pass stronger gun control measures. He called gun violence a national sickness and said people in this country care more about guns than the lives of children. He noted a personal connection. His wife works at ODU. He said he could not speak to the specific details of this case because of the ongoing investigation. Fatehi is someone who has spent his career on the back end of gun violence. The charges, the trials, the victims' families in courtrooms. He drove to campus that day. His wife was at the university where a shooting had just happened. He stood in front of reporters and used the platform he had in that moment to say what he believed needed to be said. Governor Spanberger said she had spoken with university leadership and that state support was being mobilized. Attorney General Jay Jones said his office was working with investigators. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed federal assistance. Virginia Senator Mark Warner said he was closely monitoring the situation and keeping students and the community in his thoughts. Congressman Bobby Scott, whose district includes Norfolk, said in the statement he was horrified to learn of the violent tragedy at Old Dominion University. All of those people responded from wherever they were when they heard the news. Fatehi was already there, standing outside a building where someone had just been killed, with a professional obligation to respond to gun violence and a personal reason to have felt this one differently from the others. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.